Okay, so we're going to talk about animation and dynamics, the two items that we have not talked about a lot before. So here in this corner, you have your different options: modeling, rigging, animation, FX rendering, and you can customize. So what we're going to talk about right now is about animation and FX. So I'm going to just open a new scene and show you guys how the basics. So down here, you have your keyframe slider or time slider, where you see your frame 1 to whatever frame you have, which is 120 in this case, and you can slide in between. Down there, you have your frame range, where you can expand that to the end of your frame. So Maya is a very powerful animation software. So it is endless how much stuff you can do in animation here. So anything you dig in, you can go forward and forward, but you don't really need to do much here. So just as basic as knowing that we can set the frames to, let's say, 200 in this case. If you want to zoom in some of the frames, you can do that in this way. So we see 1 to 73 there, or you can go all the way to 1 to 200. And then down here, you got this icon, a guy running next to here. That's animation preferences or time slider. So right now you have the options for time slider. You click on that. The most important thing here is the playback speed. So we usually, for the simulations that we do, we put it on play every frame. In animations, in real life, when they do animation, they do real time, 24 frames per second. You can do it slower or you can do it faster based on what you need. But I'm going to keep you that play every frame. One more thing that is useful is setting animation down there. Lots of options to work with. I'm not going to go through, but there's one of them that is important, that is the tangents. If you remember, Branko was talking about when an object was moving, it was starting to accelerate at the beginning and decelerate at the end. So if here you click the weighted tangents and then put them on linear, that effect will go away. So you will not see that. It will start in a linear speed and go all the way to the end with the same speed. I'm going to uncheck it so that this problem will happen for us, and then we'll solve it. So we'll see how to solve this problem. But if you click this and put this on linear, you'll have no problem with that issue. So basic parameters. If you just, let's say you have a sphere here, you move it up there. So by the way, I know it's about animations, but even if your question is as simple as, hey, how do you do that sphere, just let me know. And then you move it somewhere, and then you put your keyframe on frame 1. And then here you can see the channel box, you can see the different properties of your object. So my X location, my Y location, my Z, my rotations, and spin. So my X number at this point is at -7 something. So I'll right click on it, I key select this. So this will show up a red line and a red box over here, which means system will remember that at frame 1, my object was at X -7.66, which is enough. And then you can go to whatever frame that you want. In this case, I'll go to 70. I'll move my object, and then I'll decide which of these properties I want to put as the keyframe. So I'll right click on it, do a key select there again, and then go back so you see my object is animated. Like that. Have you guys ever done any animations in key object before? So it's as simple as that, the idea. So you have a keyframe where it defines where your objects or properties of the scene is, and then you start moving those keyframes in your time slider and your objects around. And basically in Maya, you can animate any number or any property. Even if I do shift right click here, I go to reduce faces. I put it at 0, and I go to frame 1. So important thing, remember, always go to your frame, then do the changes. If you do the other way, it will get confusing. So go to frame 1. This is at 0. Right click right next to it on this. And should do. That was the most simple. Okay, so you should give me a key, but you can also press S, which is set all the keyables. The short key is S. When you press S, any number that could be changed or has been changed will be set in this frame. It's kind of dangerous to do it because you have not touched some of the properties, a lot of the properties, actually, like location, scale, or anything like that. It will freeze all that in that frame, which you might not want to happen. But in this case, when you cannot find the set key, that's the option here. Also, pressing S is usually the fastest way to get the keyframe in a frame set. So a lot of animators do that. So let's say we did that, and then we move this to 70. We change this to 90. We apply it. We press S again. We go to beginning. We see as this object moves, the number of faces change. So basically, any option, any property that we can change in Maya, we can also set a keyframe to that. So those are the basics of how to do animation. We're gonna go through some of the options, some of the examples that I've thought about. You can look at these images. So a lot of these has been done through mCloss. I'm gonna start with some simpler geometries and some simpler ideas, and then go to mCloss afterwards. Any questions so far? It will forget it. So let's say I go to frame 1, and then I move my object right there to there. And then I go back to frame 1, go back to where it was. So it forgets if you're changing, unless you press S or you set the key, and then it will be there. And then it will remember the second key that you set, and then you play it. So the other thing that you can do when you want to move something around is to define a path for it. So let's say we have a box here, and then we draw a curve as a path. So like that. Enter, let's start. So now you can select your object. Instead of setting the keyframes and moving it along, you can just go to your animation here, go to constraints, select motion pathway, and then attach your object to a curve. So as you know, if you click on this box, it will show all the options that you might have for this. And then I'll select this, shift select my line. So usually in Maya, you select your object and the shift select the second thing you want to apply to it or attach to it and everything, and then go apply. Now, when I play, it will go along my line from frame 1 to frame 200. But you see, it will always be the same box. It's not deforming, it's just following the path. Some other options that you might want to know about are where is my front axis and what is my alt axis. So the trick in Maya is that sometimes the alt axis changes from Y to Z or Z to Y, and then the front might change accordingly from Y to X or other way. So be aware of that. Sometimes things get messed up, and then that's something a solution to have in mind for solving this problem, potential problem. Okay. Yeah, it is a mesh already, so it just doesn't have any triangulation on it. So I'll stop the animation. I'll go to frame 1. I'll select my object. I'll go to channel box. In the inputs, I can see my history. I go back, and then now I'm adding my subdivision. So let's say 5 by 5 by 10. Then I'll get that. I'll make that change. That looks better. So still, if you play, it's not going to change. But there is an option here. You can go back to constraints. Then you have animation on that corner. You can go to constraints, motion path, follow path object. Again, you can click on the options, see what it gives you, go local or don't. You can play with these and figure out what they mean. But you click follow, and then this will happen. Now it is trying to deform and get the form of the line. Yeah. So we were in animation, we were in constraints, we already went to motion and path. So I'll just move this here so that we have it. So if you have your object, it's not assigned to anything, you select that, shift select your path, and then attach to a motion path. It will just move on that path. And then after that, if you just have your object selected, go follow the path, it will deform to the form of the path that you're following, like this. One more thing in editing animations, here in Windows, we have Window, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. Based on the object I've selected, you can see the graph that it changes here. So it's not changing that much, but the only thing is to know that when it's a bezier or when it's a curvature, you will see that acceleration and deceleration effect. But as soon as you change it to a direct line using these options at the top, that effect will not show up anymore. So that's how to solve that. The other thing that Bronco showed in the class was to create snapshots of your object. So you have this selected, you go to your animation menu, you go to visualize, and then you create your snapshots here. You open the option. So always, if you don't know what this button is going to do, just click on this box to have the option of video. Then you'll see what is your time range. You want to do it for the whole time slider, or you want to do start to end and define. Actually, my beginning is frame 1, my end is frame 200, and then how many increments I'm going to have, let's say 20. I'll snapshot it. It will give me that. The reason is, actually, it gave me that, but the problem is, a lot of the times in Maya, you end up doing things and having that in history, and then when you snapshot an object, the history will not be carried with it. So there are different ways to solve that problem. One of them is to delete your history. Sometimes it will delete the changes that you have made to. In this case, you can just easily go follow, use the local, and then apply it this way. We go edit, we go delete the type, we delete motion path, so we do once again. Okay. So shift select, follow that. Now, delete the box. Okay, that's a good sign. Thank you. Extra points for everybody who praised it. Okay. Okay. Okay, as I said, that shift select, attach, and then follow the path. I'll do local apply, and then I play. Now it should give me the snapshots, I hope. It is not. For some reason. I'll figure it out and let you guys know. But when you click on that snapshot, it should give you. The other way to do that is to just play and pause. Whenever you're happy with the result, you do Control D, make a duplicate and move it over. And then play, you're happy with this, you move it over. You play, you get happy, move it over. So as easy as that, you can just make duplicates of your objects while you're doing the animation. So that's basically the basics of how to do animation in Maya. So we talked about the keyframes, how to set your frames, how to do your options, how to change your graph, how to move objects, how to set keys, and how to follow a path. Any questions so far? Yeah. Okay. So hopefully we'll go to some more interesting things here. I'm not sure how fast my computer is because I tried these on my desktop before. We'll see if it plays my time. So as I told you, a lot of times it gets confused with where your X, Y, and Z axes are. But as you can see here, vaguely, I've got a few boxes moving along and changing all these shapes there. Okay. any modeling technique that you can do in Maya, you can animate that. So now we're going to try some of the modifiers that we have in Maya here. So again, I draw a box. Make sure that you have your subdivisions, because if you don't have them, it will do nothing for you. I'll make it a 5 by 5 with 10 by 5 by 5. All right. I'll grab 200 frames, and here's my whole range. Now I go to modeling. I select my object, I go to deform, and then I go to non-linears and select that. I put it there. So if you look at these, each of them will change your object in its own way. So if you do a blend, and then from the channel box here, you can select your blend. You can give it a curvature, let's say 90 degrees. It will change, if that's too much, or 50, that will change my form in this way. So of course we can animate this as well. So I'll set it at 0 on my frame 1. I right click here, I key select it. I go all the way to the end, 200. So by the way, these are play going all the way to the end, beginning bottom here in this part. Set it at 50, and then set the key again. Play down. It is animated. Yeah. And then you have this blend form here. You can even select that and animate that. So as I can move this here, it will change. So maybe at frame 1, I have this set here, key selected, and then I'll go all the way to the end. I take it there, I key selected that. So now you can see it changing in a different way. You can also do the same thing with all these other deformers. So I talked about blend, we can do a twist, we can do a spine, flare, anything that you want, but let's say we're gonna do a twist. So we select our object, we do a twist, it is that way, which is actually interesting. We'll just keep it that way, or rotate it a little bit to have this effect. And then we go through a twist, and then we set an angle for start, which can be 40. We put one for the end, which can be minus 50. So that's what we get. I go to frame 1. I zero these two out again. So 0 and 0. I select both of them with holding Control, right click, and key select. I'll go to the end. Now I do my 40 and minus 50. Like that. And now I set the keys for these two. I go to the beginning and I play. So now you see some more weird stuff is happening, which might be good or bad, I don't know, but that's what it's doing. So if you do it more intentionally, of course you can get better results. The other thing we can do here is to go to frame 1, zoom back a little bit, move our objects. So I selected everything because some of the deformers are actually objects which we should move. I select them down there, I set the keyframe in the y-axis there, I go to my last frame, I move it here, I set the key there. So what it's doing now, it's moving around the axis while it's changing. And now I can do the snapshot. Hopefully this time will work. So I select my object, I go to animation here, visualize, create animation snapshots. 1 to 220 increments, snapshots, done. Right. So now we have all these objects that shows the process of our modeling, like that. And also how this play forward. Yeah. Okay. So if you really want to see it frame by frame, you're just going to click on this. It will move frame by frame, if you see here. But also you can go to your settings, time slider, here in your playback speed. There you can do half, which is a default preset, but you can do other and give it, let's say, I don't know, 5 frames in a second, save it, and then play it as a 5 frame per second. Right? So that's it. Any other questions? Right. So again, these are some of the basic tools. So any changing, any edits that you can do in Maya, you can animate that too. And then you can move your object along the path, and you can see the snapshots happening there. I'm going to open something that I did, which is not very different from this. So that is the same process. I just played with some scale and rotation of the object itself. I also picked some of the vertices and moved those and animate those as well. You can do as much as you want and then play them in an animation, move your object, and then see which part of the process you're happy with. Yes. So for each of these examples that I'm showing you guys, I've already done that and saved it. So in case it's needed, I can show you guys here, and we'll also upload this on YouTube for sure. So after this, we're going to do some more interesting stuff, which is actually more dynamic. One way of doing animation, which is very simple, I'm not going to show it here, it's more like an animation thing, but not really useful for architecture, is if you do, let's see if I can find it here. So another thing that Maya does is that changes the name of the menus every version that you go for. So that's kind of not very easy. So you have fields and your solvers here. So if you open that and keep it here, you can see down here that you can create active rigid bodies and passive rigid bodies. Using those two, which is pretty simple, you can create objects and then move let's say a box that will crash into it, and then it will cause the box to fall off, and easily it will understand the physics and all the rules of nature, and you can play with those. Your Maya environment will be an actual physical environment that objects does not collide into each other or go into each other or pass each other. They will actually have effects on each other using these two. I'm not going to show them today, just know that they are there if you need it anytime. But I'm going to show you some similar ideas. Now I'm going to open a basic end class. Alright. So this is what we're going to do right now. These are a series of polys that I have created through this animation. I hope that I can play it here because at the time I was using this model, my Y and Z were different. So see this movie. So it is actually simulating a clock idea, and then these spheres are acting as objects in the space where the cloth is falling on. And at each frame you can pause, and then if you like the result, you can move it as one of your options and then play with it. So that's where we're gonna do. So I start a new scene. It's pretty simple. The whole idea is that you have, let's say, an object, and you have a plane. So make sure your plane has enough subdivisions. The way to do that is to select your plane, go to go to channel box, go to your polyplane, give it some subdivision. I'll go to 2020 for this. And then move this up right there. As easy as this, you will have your FX here, and then you will go to cloth, and then create an end cloth, and then you'll play. It will fall off without doing anything. But your object is now a class that understands gravity. I'll go back to frame 1, I'll select my object, go to my attribute editor. That's where you can access all your different properties of this end class function. Also, if you go to your outliner, you can see each time you add a modifier or a dynamic object into your scene. Right now I've got my end class, and I've got my new class. So right now in this new class, I can change my properties of the environment. So let's say I've got the gravity of 9.8. It's in the down direction. I can change that number. I can also check here to say use the plane as, so now this plane is my ground. Also, I can select my sphere, go to end class, and put it as a passive collider so that my class will collide into it, and now play my animation. Oops, it's going out. You might see that happening. The reason is, as I told you, it doesn't really understand Z is off or Y is on. You can just go there, change that in your plane. So plane normal 0, 0, 1 is the correct one. Yeah. Right now. So now you see this cropping effect happen. So this is pretty simple. So the whole idea is that you can have a poly as a cloth, you can have objects as colliders, and you can play on it, it will do the simulation, and it will happen this way. You can make it more fun with adding more colliders. So I'm gonna just move my object up there, so that's my cloth. I'm gonna extend this to, let's say, 400, and then I'm gonna have my poly selector. So when you have your poly selector, you go to attributor editor. Down up here, you can see presets. So basically, you can set what the material of your cloth is. If you click on the preset, it will give you some options. You want it to be silk, you want it to be lava or honey, you want it to be a rubber sheet or anything. Rubber sheet is sometimes interesting. Sometimes if you want too stretchy, you can go with honey, or if you want it to be too solid, you can go with soft sheet metal. For this option, for this practice, I'm gonna do rubber sheet and then replace that. So now this will have different options of properties that you can also access manually through these collision and dynamic properties. So if you open these, there are a bunch of numbers that you can go through and work with. I'm not gonna talk about them. They're pretty straightforward. What is the mass of your object? What is the, I don't know, the friction? Anything you can change manually over there. Okay, now I'm gonna just copy a bunch of these spheres around, like that. Okay. And then just changing the sizes of some of them, make that bigger, make that one a bit bigger, also make my cross bigger, and then select all of these except the one that was already collider, go to end class, set them as passive colliders. Now I'll go to first frame and I play it. So you see as this fall down, it will collide on the spheres that we have created in the black. And then you can pause at every second or any frame that you think something interesting is happening or worth exploring, and make a duplicate of that object and play with it. Close right. Okay, so you get two different types of objects. One is a cloth, that in this case I selected this poly to be. So I select this, go to end class, create an end class. The other one is passive colliders. So I have these objects. I will just select them. I'll go to end class and create passive colliders. And then like that, it will understand that these are colliders. If you don't do that, it will go past through. And then you play. And then so other things you can do with your class. You can change the properties of the materiality, what it is actually. Then you can put some constraints. You can define some points, some edges, or some places that you hold your class in the air and just keep it there. You can also change what is happening in your environment. So let's say here, I go there and then I change the gravity. I'm not happy with Earth. I change the gravity to 30. Now I see what will happen next. So basically, it should be faster. Also, it should be stronger. Like that. It's a little bit tricky to do that, but you can always go there, delete the properties you have already assigned. You can go to your outliner, find what is what and just delete that. Now that you brought that up, it is important that when you select an object and give it a M class or a passive collider or anything, it will create an object or a icon over here. Just know which one refers to what in case you need to go back and change them or edit them, because you might end up having like too many things on the scene and you won't figure out what's what. So you can rename them. Yeah, you can just double click like that and give it a like, I don't know, studio 2 or whatever. Okay. Now I'm going to open something more interesting. So in this example, I made something like that. So I'm going to just hide this. So you select your object first page, it will hide that. So here I've just got a poly surface I created there, and then I right clicked. I went to vertices. I select a bunch of the vertices here, like that, and then went to N constraints, and then created some transform constraints. What they do is that they don't move, they don't rotate, they don't scale unless you tell them to, and then they will hold your crop upright. So I created those, and then I play the animation. Go back to object node and then play the animation. Which is slow. So this is ball, and then some of these points are going to be attached like that. And then again, you can go and change all the properties that you might want to do. In this case, I might want to go again and go to my nucleus, select my gravity is already 40, I want to have 100 for my gravity, and play it and see what will happen. So one thing, when you play something in an end class, it's simulating when you're playing, so as soon as you change something, it's not going to reflect on your scene. You have to go to frame 1 and then replay, so now this time it will apply the new properties that you have changed. So you might be in frame 120 and moving your object and you see, hey, it's not moving, what's happening? That is because you're in the middle of a simulation. So always go to your first frame like that, and if you want to move something around, do it there, and then hit play. So the same way we selected some vertices with constraints on those, you can do the same thing with edges or faces or objects. I'm going to open a different example that is a bit more complex. No, it doesn't really matter where it is. So as soon as you create something, let me open a new scene so you get it better. So as soon as you have an object, okay, now I'm going to show you also when your object is not a surface. And then as soon as you go M class and create an M class, it will show up in your attribute editor, nucleus. And then you can change all the settings there. You can also select it from your outline. You can change it, but it doesn't affect anything. What's that? Not really. We can try it. It might affect the force that it applies, but you can also define some limbs and then like that. And then let's say use the plane, let's say 0, 0, 1, and then move your object a little bit higher, and then give it a preset. Let's say it's on a water balloon, and then play. No, not really. So no, it will get confused. So if my object was somewhere here in the plane, it might just jump somewhere in this space, or it might go up, yeah, like that. So a weird force will be applied to your object. Okay. So next one, there. So now I'm going to show you how to do something like that here. I'm just going to go ahead and play it actually. And then while it's playing, I'm going to tell you what's going on here. So this is the same surface that we had. Right. So this is basically the same surface that we created in the previous example. In this example, I have selected all the edges on this end and put a constraint over there. Also some random points over here and put a constraint over there. So what will happen basically is that I'll just delete this, go back to the beginning and play it again. So what is happening here is that just gravity is affecting on my surface and my constraint is holding it up, and this will happen on my object. But what also I did here was I made a fan or air blow function, which you can find in your field and solvers, and then applied this to my object and played it to get some more interesting effects. So I'm going to explain what the fields and solvers are just quickly. So you can create all these different forces here in your fields and solvers. So starting with air, drag, gravity, Newton, radial, turbulence, uniform, and vortex. So each of them, you kind of get from the name what they do, but they basically just apply a force to your objects over to see in the environment. And then let's say you create an error, you will do nothing. You create an error, it will give you an object somewhere in the air. Here at 0 and 0. If you cannot find it, you can also go to your outliner and find it there. Have that airfield there, and then I move it somewhere here. As the previous dynamic objects, I can go to my attributor editor here and see all the different properties. What is the magnitude, what is the direction, what is the speed, anything you want to change here, you can do. Then you select your object, you go there to your fields and solvers, you shift select your fan or whatever you want to apply to, and then you say assign to select. You click on that, now it's assigned. You play it, it will get the extra force. So when you're using with working with NCloth, you have to develop the numbers and magnitude and speed to actually get a result and see where it's going. As soon as you see the effect of your object in the scene, then you can start reducing it or actually editing it the way you want it to work. So if I go to frame 0 now, so those are weird things that Maya does. Just by undoing, sometimes you can get it solved, sometimes you can't, and it's this example here. All right. Okay, now play it. The wind has changed a little bit because this has been added. I can also move this to a different location, like that, and then rotate this around like this. First frame, play it again. It's not actually doing much. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So you can change the direction here, basically. I'll just push it through like that. Try it again. Right, anyways. This one over. That is working. Yeah. Okay. Now you see you get a different effect, right? So again, as the previous example, anytime you like your object, you just select it, you Control V. Again, you select it, you Control V, or you can move them to a different location, just keep them, and so that's basically how you can work with fields and forces in Maya as a dynamic tool for doing some generative design. As you can see, you could not basically just go in and model this form, but this is a good way of producing it. Question? Okay. Right. I'm gonna open the next file. So these ones. Um, so the same idea. I'm just gonna explain to you how this is made. I'm pretty sure you have got the basic simple rules behind it. So now I've got this box here. I made it an end cloth. I selected these faces to be my constraints. On this edge, I selected these vertices to be my constraints. And then here I selected one edge to be my constraint. At the same time, I started moving my constraints to a different location like that. So these guys are moving there and rotating. These guys are scaling and rotating. And these guys are moving and rotating. At the same time, at one of the results of this object, which was that, I duplicated, moved it on top, gave it another end class, and just quiet it on top to see what will happen. Now I'm going to play. So I think it's pretty cool and pretty easy way of doing some very, very realistic dynamics in the software. Um, so anytime that you might be happy with your result, you can just duplicate it um, and just copy somewhere and have them. So these are some of the results that I got from this. So this was the initial state, and then these are the second object that was following on the first one. I'm gonna play it one more time, just to take a look. Um, so now, do you guys feel comfortable going ahead and doing one of these on computers now, or is it anywhere that is vague or confusing for you? No, it's clear. It's pretty simple. Like there's nothing crazy about it. No, not really, but you can always. So one of the reasons that I'm not showing anything close to your model is that because I don't want to give you guys any directions. But there are a lot of ways that you can manipulate your object in this way. Like you can select your object as an end cloth or as a passive collider, put stuff into it, or I don't know, fall a circle on top of it, fall a sphere on it, or apply force to it, apply wind, put your plane on a constraint and apply wind to the rest of your model, see what it will do. Something like that. There's lots of ways that you can manipulate your object easily. Um, so that's the difference between enclosed and your rigid object. So if you create a rigid body that I said you can do, and I'm not going to show you, is your object will stay rigid all the way through. But if you do an enclosed based on the properties you give to it, you can simulate, let's say, a metal or a sheet metal object or an aluminum or whatever that is hard. You can push it to some surfaces and it will get dense and it will stay that way. Okay, I've got two more examples to show you guys, and then I think we're done for today. So one is that one. Kinda, you can think about your own projects this way. So again, I've got a product of our previous example here turned into an enclosed. I've got two spheres that are moving towards it and pushing it like that. So this was created, and then I select this one, went to enclosed, and did an enclosed for this box. For those spheres, I selected those, went to enclosed, created a passive collider. At the same time, I moved my spheres the way I showed you at the beginning of the tutorial to this direction. It doesn't give us a perfect result because it is not at the right speed, but you can kind of get the idea of what it will be. Okay. So so this is maybe too abrupt or maybe too radical, but you can see your own projects to be that box the center, and then you can exactly you can smash it. I guess that was not. All right, so I'm going to show you the last example here, which is that one. It seems to have a problem, but I hope it's fine. So again here, just going back to the fields, I created this Newton force that is pretty interesting. It gives you, okay, let's open a new scene. I'm gonna just show you this guy. This is the last thing today, and then you're free to go. I know everybody might be tired, but okay, I'm gonna create a box. Give it some subdivision. Let's say 10 by 4 by 4. Define this as an end clock over here. So this is an end clock. Nothing's happening. Whatever material the preset is, it has it, and it will fall off if nothing else is defined. I will create a Newton field here. It is hidden in the center. I will go to Window, Outliner, select my Newton field, and then go to my attributor editor, go to volume and controls, and give it an actual form. So I'll define a sphere for my field. Then I will go there, make it bigger like that. I will say trap my object inside. I can also play with all these different factors, and I'll change that to 8. And then I'll play it now. Nothing happens again. Or a little bit of thing happens. So what I wanted to tell you is that if you should select this, shift select your field, go assign to selector. The other thing you can do is, if you have your object selector already and then you create a field, it will be assigned to it automatically. So this is the result you get. It's not strong enough. I'll go select it again. I'll make it, let's say, 40. Now see what happens there. Not much. Now go to there we go. Okay, now it's playing with your mesh, just applying forces to it. So it's like one of those big spheres that you have all these balls in it and rotated, and like when you do water or something. So it's that kind of effect it will create for you, and you can put anything in it, and at every frame you can stop it and see an end result. So just to recap, I told you the basics of animation. I know it's pretty straightforward. I don't need to repeat those. But some of the tools that you can play with here is in your FX menu. If you go under fields and solvers, you can have all these fields and forces. There are some more items you can just go look them up and use them easily. Also, you can work with the end constraints. You can have different constraints for this item. For this example, in this tutorial, I'll just use the transfer constraint. You can use other ones. Then I use end clock, just clicking on end class creation and passive collider creation. There are lots of other things you can do with particles and fluids and hair or simulations like that in Maya very easily. That will take a lot longer time for me to show you guys, but feel free to go explore and see what you can do. Maybe one of your models is covered with hair, and then you place I don't know, the cross on top of it, fall it on top, and see what the form will be, and that will be your fun. If there's any questions at the end, I'll be happy to answer. If not, I can just